Kia ora, it's Holly Morchek from ACE New Zealand, again here bringing you another fantastic webinar. So for those joining us online, thanks for giving us a bit of your morning. I'm going to encourage you straight off, if there is a topic, some content you're really interested, drop us a line at ACE New Zealand, let us know what's on your mind, and we'll do our best to line up some expert speakers that can address that. For those of you who haven't been on one of our webinars before, everyone's muted to cut down on line noise. However, you can ask a question at any time. You guys should have like a GoToWebinar control ribbon or control panel, and there'll be a button there where you can submit questions. Ben and Amy really like to just take your questions as they come, so feel free to type them in at any time and we'll try and work those into the presentation rather than waiting at the end. So there we go. And for those of you that do have things pop up throughout your morning, we are recording this webinar and it, along with the slides, will be emailed to you guys later today or tomorrow. So yeah, so you can rest assured, we hope you'll engage with us. This is going to be my first time using polls in the webinar. So fingers crossed technology works with us. But yeah, so get ready to engage with us live. And from here, I'm just going to hand over to Ben and Amy to introduce themselves and dive straight in. So thanks everyone for joining.
So I'll start by welcoming everyone today. And some of you have seen me before in a couple of ACE seminars, but I'm actually going to introduce Amy because it's more fun to introduce the other person. So Amy started her business development career all way back quite a few years ago over in Australia now for SKM, which many of you will now be familiar with. It's part of Jacobs. She's an absolute go-to and specialist in winning tenders and everything bids. In fact, she's a veteran of it, and I'm allowed to call her a veteran in this context. 400 plus competitive processes she's actually gone through with a really high win rate, and she's actually had a lot of stories through the last post-pandemic era, so it's been great to hear from Amy. So she works for Julian, Midwinter and Associates, and that's Amy who'll be jointly presenting with me today.
Thanks for that, Ben. Yes, Ben and his firm, the BD Ladder, has been working closely with JMA since you established the business during the pandemic. And yeah, I think this is your third webinar now for ACE NZ. So yes, hopefully everyone is benefiting from Ben's expertise in sales and marketing.
Oh, there we are again. Let's go to the next slide.
Yes. Okay. The new normal. So yes, 2021. I'm not sure how it's going for everyone else, but I think it's been a bit stop-start, and I, for one, am quite over the term the new normal. I think we're now giving way to what I'm calling the next normal. And I feel that this year is a transitionary year. There's been obviously, good news globally with the vaccines under development, and confidence is rebounding. Yep.
Yeah, and the context here in New Zealand, obviously, particularly in Auckland, we've had shutdowns that have come and then they've gone and then they've come back again and they've gone, and it's been very disruptive in the business world and also for home work, and it's led us to do remote working again and all those kind of things which have kind of delayed projects and stopped things going and had impacts on tenders and changed deadlines or not changed deadlines depending on how the authority is taking it, and that requires us to be a bit more digital and get into innovation.
Yep, and to pivot. And I think I actually experienced an impact with the recent Auckland lockdown. I was working on a bid with a professional services firm, and we got an extension due to the lockdown, which was a double-edged sword in that it meant there was more time for reworking, which always makes more work. So there's that. And the digitisation side of things, I think people are surprised at how well it has worked. It's still a bit clunky, but yeah, I think all of that stuff is now here to stay. So working remotely, not necessarily all coming together on site to work on things like bids. So yeah, we're at a point in world history where the technology is there to do things like this webinar. And that will continue to get refined.
Yeah, and speaking of technology, we're going to test technology straight away and go straight into our first poll. Oh, and it's worked, fantastic. So,
yay.
If you could all answer this, what are your 3 biggest bid challenges since COVID-19? I'm not going to read those all out, but please select the one that's most appropriate.
Yeah, so maybe if we make it your biggest bid challenge rather than your 3 biggest.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm seeing roughly half of you have voted. Amy and Ben, I'm not sure if you can kind of see the results that are coming in, but right now it's kind of neck and neck between 30-ish% expected RFT and RFPs delayed or deferred, and roughly about the same percentage, around 30, not winning enough bids. So those are kind of the 2 neck and neck leaders to that poll.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, and then roughly about 15-ish% each are replying coordinating bid development with many remote team members, and then also winning but on poor commercial terms. So, and only 7% are coming back with no strategy on bid decisions. So, yeah. Okay. So thanks everyone for voting. I'll mute myself again, and we can move on to the next slide.
Yep. And those answers, or there's no right or wrong answer with any of that, no. But that does dovetail nicely with some of the things we're going to get into during our session today.
Yeah, and as we said in the intro there, the delay part does create its own challenges, and it leads into not winning enough bids. And if they're not coming through into the market and your win rate's low, it's going to put a lot of pressure on you, which is possibly why the people are winning on commercial terms, because they're panicking and going too much on price. And we will cover those through in the next few slides and give you some tactics to try and change that and actually get off that price and have a calmer plan to capture things before they actually arrive to the market.
That's right. So if we go to the next slide. Yep. So yeah, and I don't want to sort of, tell people what they already know, in that I'm sure all of the ACE members definitely have their fingers on the pulse with what's happening in the market. But my scan and desktop research into all of this, which includes talking to one of my very good friends who is a partner in an engineering firm in Christchurch, is that, yeah, there's been a lot of announcements, a lot of delays, partly due to the pandemic, but also because last year was an election year. There's been a lot of changing priorities. All of that aside, though, there are a lot of opportunities out there. So if we went to the next slide. Yeah, so this is a neat little website that shows the infrastructure pipeline, and a lot of it is heavily civil focused. So you've got, it's a bit hard to see, but the key areas where there are opportunities either out in the market or to be announced or shovel ready perhaps, sort of centre around rail, roads, and also social infrastructure. If we go to the next slide, please, Holly. Yeah, so last year, Treasury announced their top 10 shovel-ready infrastructure projects, and it's their top 10, it's a mix of projects across sectors, regions, and they're funded in different ways. And it's coming from not only central government, but also extends into local government, of course, and private sector firms and trusts. If we go to the next slide.
Yes, so as everyone knows, there's been quite a few announcements recently. Lots of change with how investors are feeling and confident, but there's actually been a massive investment, and our property prices here, as many of us are brutally aware in Auckland, have gone up through the roof. So there's a real need to develop more. The government's really behind this, and actually now we're moving into different areas, and there's greenfield opportunities for developments, and that will come with a relevant infrastructure. Some of that will be government led, quite a lot of it will actually be led by private developers as well. So there's kind of a change of what cash is going to come in there, and where the opportunities will come, and where you might see you responding to tender or building those relationships to win that work.
That's right. And I think in NZ, approximately 75% of these opportunities are going to be government driven, but there is that 25% of private sector led things, including I was reading in Selwyn down in the South Island, they've had a 26% increase in building consents. So there's lots of work with sectioning for subdivisions, et cetera, to be had. And that's usually through the private sector. So you maybe not necessarily competing in a formal tender environment there, but you still need to be competitive to win.
Absolutely right. And we're seeing sort of small blocks being built and developed over here, and then once they're completed, being sold back to Housing New Zealand. So they're waiting for the developers to actually take the risk on, build the block, and then they happily buy it to house people in a nice environment.
I think one of the constraints.
Carry on.
Yep. And I was going to say a couple of the constraints there I noticed is that engineering is actually on the skills shortage list, and also with shipping delays due to the pandemic, there's shortfalls in some of the building supplies needed for all these new builds. So yes, hopefully the government can build their way out of the housing crisis, with support from ACE membership, and the construction sector as well. So yeah, given 75% of the opportunities are likely to come through central or local government, there's a few key things that you do need to bear in mind if you're wanting to win and deliver work for government. So if we run through the list here, we'll talk about this a bit later, but it's about building appropriate relationships before bids are released. If you're finding that gets alert and that's the first you've heard of an opportunity, it's probably too late and you won't be well positioned to be a favourite. And then the other thing that's hopefully obvious to everyone is once the RFT is out, you do want to have respect for the probity of the process. So, maintain contact, but do it appropriately.
Yeah, and I would urge that people read the RFT correctly. I can't emphasize enough the amount of times I've been with big teams when they said they can't talk to people when actually they can, and it isn't prohibited. And if it's not clearly stated, you can always ask the question in a nice, meaningful way, because if you can have interaction around the process, test your theories, test what the client's looking for, your chance of success, even if you didn't know it was out, will increase. If you'd already pre-positioned, your chance of success are hugely higher.
That's it. And I think we'll talk about this a bit more later, but yeah, it amazes me how many people are frightened to have that exploratory or clarification or business discussion with potential clients. And I think a lot of organisations calling for tenders are often surprised that they're not asked more questions, because they think, how on earth can you possibly bid if you don't ask for more info? So yeah, unless it explicitly says not to, I would not feel shy about that.
Yeah, and ultimately, if you think the issue is looking to get the best possible responses, you get the best possible responses by people asking you questions and understanding the needs and requirements. So they actually, unless they specifically state it, will want that interaction.
That's right. The need for solutions that stand up to scrutiny. So again, this is hopefully obvious with government. It's tax and ratepayers' money, a lot of media, community, public interest, and I think a famous or infamous one is probably the light rail, ongoing Auckland light rail project that's been stop-start and just can't seem to get off the ground. And should it be, heavy rail? Should it be light rail? Should it be a metro? Is it speed from the airport that's the main thing? A thing I was reading was they are going back to the drawing board with some of it, and they want more of the voice of the Auckland community to be a part of the scope. So it's a meaningful, development and bit of infrastructure that's created, and for long-term benefit. So, which is sort of into the next point, that social and sustainable outcomes, are firmly front and centre these days. There's a national wellbeing framework that I was looking at yesterday, and also things like Maori outcomes. So all of those messages need to be, you know, in your bid, as well as the technical solution. It's sort of more of the feel-good factors of doing business with you.
And to pick up on that point, it needs to be earlier in the piece. It can't just be a policy. What they're looking for is evidence you've actually done it and done it in the marketplace. So if your marketing and your everyday business actually carries that message through, you're going to put yourself in a really good position, as well as having higher engaged employees. But actually telling the market early will give you that evidence, which will allow your bid writers and your bid team to actually put that in a meaningful way for someone to score against.
That's right. You know, live those values. Another sort of practical thing with government bids, often, as we all know, they're quite form-based. You might have word or page limits or be otherwise restricted. So there's usually workarounds for things like that, but, you know, be ready for those elements. And yeah, we'll get into this in the next section, but yeah, don't wait until you get that alert on gets. You want to start preparing and having conversations and gathering your, you know, market intelligence and all of that sort of a thing well in advance of these opportunities hitting the inbox. So if we could go to the next slide.
Awesome. Well, we're back into technology, I think.
Oh,
yes.
Another poll. Thanks, Holly.
Brilliant. So, has enthusiasm for bids and cooperation from your firm's professional or subject matter experts improved since COVID-19? So if you could select one of those, that'd be great to know what's actually happening out with you in the marketplace.
For me, this is quite exciting, watching roughly half of you voted. And for a while, it was real neck and neck. So we're at almost 70% of you have voted. So I feel quite comfortable saying that most people are responding yes. They're out to win whatever they can at present. But that's about a 60-40 split right now. So if you haven't participated in the poll, feel free, get in there, click your response. We can't see who has clicked what reply, so you don't need to worry about you know, us seeing your individual responses. But all right, I'll mute myself again and let you guys get back to it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
So that's no real surprise that in a tight market, people are keen to kind of win more work. They're showing more enthusiasm, and that's kind of what you would expect. I'm sure you're seeing similar in Australia as much as it is here in New Zealand, probably globally, I'd imagine as well.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's a bit more regionalised in Australia. So particularly with Melbourne having successive waves of long lockdowns, an engineering firm I do work with is going gangbusters in Victoria because there's a lot of pent up demand for projects to get going that, you know, people weren't able to, you know, go on site, etc., etc. That's kind of okay again now. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. One little aside that I thought might be worth digging into is why some firms want to bid on everything, even ones that are, you know, in hindsight, were clearly a loser. And it's a state that I like to call competitive arousal. And the 5 factors I think that drive some of this are, you know, the bids right now. You can't wait to think about it. You just got to start going on it. It's very specific. You know, it's much easier to point at that as doing some business development or marketing activity because it's a finite thing with an end point. And, you know, once you produce it, it's tangible. You get a nice, you know, binder with your drawings or whatever in it. You can throw it down on the desk. We've done our business development. And then depending on the firm dynamics, there might be high profile principals or partners in the firm that want to just throw their hat in the ring, and they are used to getting their way on some of these, even if, you know, your experience is maybe a bit negligible. And then there's that tribal patriotism type thing, you know, what do you mean we can't bid for wastewater projects? Of course we can do it if we get it, blah, blah, blah.
I think there's
some of the psychological factors that sometimes go into the craziness.
You can encapsulate it in one phrase at the moment, can't you? FOMO. there's that real fear of missing out, because you could do this work, but the reality is deep down somewhere in your heart of hearts, you know that even if you put the best bid in the world, you're still not going to win.
That's it. And look, sometimes some of this stuff is masked a little bit when there's a boom. I know some of the firms in South Island after the earthquake were knocking back work, and that went on for 2-3 years. They just had more than they could do. And I think the particular firm I'm thinking of, what they didn't realise was that they were maybe the third or fourth person that had been contacted about jobs. They weren't the first, but everyone else was too busy.
Yeah.
And, you know, they were like, we don't need to do marketing. We don't need to develop business. We don't need to have those relationships because we're actively turning work away. And of course, that had all dried up within about 5 years. So
yeah, so I mean, the next part of this, moving to the next slide, Amy, is what do you do if you are bidding for everything? How do you kind of stop that? Hopefully we'll move to the next slide.
Go to the next one.
Oh, next slide. It's coming. Here we go.
Yep. Yeah, so I think because we're still in a transitionary period, there's going to be some hiccups and maybe some surprise lockdowns and things like that. And, you know, there's this urgency, sense of FOMO. We've got to bid for everything. We've got to, you know, bid our way out of the downturn. I think good advice is control what you can control. So the points on this slide are some of the top things that are within your control, or should be within your control, hopefully. So one that we've talked about before, Ben, is even if it is a go, use that go, no go, bid, no bid process and document it. So you've got some data being built up that if we are constantly bidding on, you know, drainage for subdivisions and missing out, we can then say, look, we've put our hat in the ring 4 times on this in the last 6 months. Something's badly wrong here. We need to pivot and do something else. Or
it brings science to the process. Having run it in other engineering organisations before, you can see when the capture score is low at say 35% chance of winning, you invariably don't win. It's like 1 in 100 chance. So if you're the sort of person who likes betting on the 100 to 1 shot and putting all your money on that because you are investing your firm's money in a bid, that's your strategy. But no, that is. But it also allows you during the process to understand where you could improve it, where you are weak, and that actually informs your bid if you still decide to go ahead. They give you a better chance. For those of you who don't have one, and we haven't got time to run a poll on that, it'd be great to know. But there's actually plenty available out in the market. There's one on the JMA website. There's one on the BD Ladder website as well. So if you do need a robust go no go process and you haven't got one, go to either of our websites and grab yourself a copy there.
The next one is, again, it's common sense, but getting prepared to bid. So that's not only the pre-positioning and relationship side of things, but it's stuff like having templates, having good boilerplate, a bid content library, which we'll talk about a bit later as well. That can take some of the stress out. And obviously the bigger firms are going to have a BD and marketing and a bid team. Smaller firms may have something a bit more rudimentary, but that will inject a lot of efficiency because you want to be able to capitalise and get bids in because there is a volume of them coming. So another one, yeah.
Like I say, the general rule of thumb, and you probably agree with this, Amy, you know, you should be updating like the projects you've completed on your CVs at least quarterly. Just add them in, just add the detail in, because at least you've got it. You can always add it and edit it when you get to the final one, but you'll forget the work you've done over a period of time.
You do, and we'll talk about that in a bit more detail down the track. But yeah, it's just easy to forget in the heat of the moment, and you just want that gone to miss capturing some of that collective experience. So yeah, it's the hardest thing. It's finding the info, putting your hands on it quickly. Another classic engineering one is she or he who bids the job delivers the job. So you want to make sure that your subject matter experts, your SMEs, who are going to be contributing to the proposal development, are the ones who are actually going to be delivering the job, and that will save a lot of, you know, tears and angst and cost blowouts, etc. once you win. The other thing, and again, it's win or lose, get a debrief so you can understand why you won, or you know, if you were unsuccessful, what needs attention, or where your weak points are, so you can address them. And we'll get into this, but again, it's working on becoming a favourite through all of the other business development and marketing activities that you're hopefully doing, you know, in a disciplined way consistently throughout the year.
Yeah. And just touching on that debrief point for a second, make sure you don't use that as a chance for the team to use it as business development, but send someone independent where possible. It's just a human factor. We're more likely to give you honest feedback to someone independent. Most people don't like telling the person in front of them that they didn't get the job because they actually don't want to work with that person, or whatever it might be. The independence is really going to give you better information.
Yeah. Otherwise, you can often be told something vague, like, oh, it was your price, and they won't be drawn further. And really, maybe it's a cultural fit issue, or there's been a service stuff up somewhere, and if you don't know about it, you can't fix it. So
yeah. Next slide.
Okay.
Oh, the best part, pre-bid positioning, always fun. And in the pandemic, it makes it different channels and exciting.
Yeah. So if we go to the next slide, please, Holly. And this is actually calling back to one of your previous webinars, Face, which members I think can go and look up.
I mean, the main point about this is, you know, we did this in a big client action plan. When you're busiest is the time to do most of your BD work. So just because you're winning proposals, don't take the foot off the gas and stop preparing and bidding for the next one. So you don't want to repair the roof when it's raining, you want to do it when the sun's shining.
Yeah, that's right. And it's like that example I said earlier with the firm knocking back work post-earthquake, and then, you know, a year or two later thinking, oh, we better do some marketing. It was too late by then, probably. So
yeah.
If we go to the next slide. Yes, so at the moment things are probably okay in NZ, and they're sort of a bit up and down in Australia in terms of where you can travel and all of that. But I think certainly some of the leisure travel side of things is starting to come back. But what I've observed is that business travel is pretty dead. So unless you're local to your prospective client, it might be quite difficult to get some face-to-face time with them. So what can you do digitally to position and raise your profile with prospective clients or existing clients? If we go to the next slide.
So this is around how you actually use your BD skills to actually get in front of people, some sort of hints and tips. I mean, obviously we can still do coffees here and they're working well, but more and more people are using phones and actually having, like we are today, webinars, but more obviously on the Teams and Zooms kind of meetings. So make sure you keep having those. Book those in regularly with those people. Make sure, even if you're working on a project, you ask questions outside of the project work you're doing. So great, we're doing this. What else is coming up for you? What else is important to you? Ask that of your clients. You'll start to understand it. Really start building thought leadership pieces, those content pieces that actually will pre-position you for the next work, will show you're an expert in the field. Real tip about that is actually focus on the questions your clients want answering, so that what you write is relevant to them and the questions they are. It may feel like you're giving away some of your secrets, but actually at a high level you're answering those questions without getting into the detail of how it's done. It will put you top of the pile. Going back to one of Amy's points, you want to be the first one called, and just ultimately clean up your digital presence. And I know the first seminar I did for the ACE team here was around personal branding, but you know, when we meet someone or we have a contact with someone who wants to meet us and we've never met them before, the first thing we do is probably Google them, and that tends to throw up their LinkedIn profile. If we go to the next slide, the LinkedIn profile first, and it also throws up your if you're on the website. But this is exactly what your clients are looking at. Well, hopefully not me, because that would be a bit odd.
Bit weird.
But looking at the same context,
Yeah, that's right. And look, this is a bit of a trend that we've noticed in Australia, not necessarily with engineering tenders, but in other professional services domains, that as part of the tender requirements, we needed to include LinkedIn links to each professional's LinkedIn profile, which was a bit of a surprise. And the client I was working with, not everyone in the team actually had a LinkedIn profile. This is about 4 years ago. So guess what? They've all got them now. And I think they might be asking for that info for a couple of reasons. One being, is this person being presented really an expert in, commercial law or whatever we were dressing them up for? Because I think the LinkedIn profile often tells the story. And two, possibly in the world I was working in, who knew who, and who they were networked with. So I'm not sure what the tendering organisation necessarily thought stalking people on LinkedIn was going to tell them, but that's just something to be aware of.
I think there's that other part of it, there's that checkpoint. Is it true and real? But actually, if you go on someone's LinkedIn profile, you can see if they are a thought leader in that space, or at least a curator of content, what they share, is it relevant? You can also see references as well. So actually, if I was employing someone, if I go in there and see they've got some pretty relevant references from their clients and they do great work, it's going to take a lot of the pressure off my mind. So actually, this is a chance for you, off the formal tender, to actually really promote yourselves in a really cool way with the brand that you want to. And because you can update it at any point, if you know you're going for a new piece of work, it really does pay to go back to your LinkedIn and your website profiles and all your digital presence to make sure it is absolutely cognizant of what you're putting in that bid, because it will resonate with the client, who will most likely check both, even if they haven't asked for those links. Because if they're curious and you're getting to the final stages, why wouldn't they Google and look you up online? Because if I was a purchaser, I know I would.
That's it. And yeah, it's just part of the cost of doing business now. I think it's like not having a business card if you don't have a LinkedIn. In fact, you should probably have a LinkedIn and not a business card these days. So yeah.
Yeah, many successful engineering consultancies run without a website and run with just a LinkedIn profile and LinkedIn page. But all this comes down to the point of trying to be the favourite. So if we go to the next slide.
Yeah, so ideally, and again, the world is not ideal, but controlling what we can control and what messages you're putting out there in advance of these opportunities being released. You want to be top of mind, you want to be a go-to, hopefully positively differentiated, maybe for some kind of weird niche. As it happens, my father is a civil engineer, and he's still working now full time, and it's because he knows how to do some weird drainage stuff that I think everyone else thinks is terribly complicated and boring, but yeah, he's a favorite go-to for that work, and he's never short of work. So yeah, that's the ideal, I guess, starting point before the bid is even released. So if we go to the next slide, please, Holly.
Which is coming into this section, managing bids remotely, really highly relevant, and it's highly relevant even when we're not in lockdown. Many of you will be coordinating bids across the Tasman, which is always fun, but now we're getting better at doing that remotely. There's also across New Zealand, and it's easy when you're in the same region. People may not be in the office because they're working from home. The time you get them, they may not necessarily be in. So actually, all these things are coming into a really good practice to actually get them more efficient. They've also been brought on more by COVID. So Amy's now going to start taking you through like the top 5 tips of what to do and how to manage a bid remotely.
Yeah.
Next slide.
They might be animated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of these are common sense, and I won't dwell on them too much, other than to say communication, it's obvious, always was important anyway, but as we were saying earlier, gone are the days where you might have a big tender war room and you've got all your technical writers and your BD people on site together. So I think the kickoff meeting is a great point to agree things like the frequency of the comms, who will be involved in which checkpoints, and what technology tools you're going to use. So I think everyone's probably fairly au fait with things like Teams and Zoom now. But yeah, that's here to stay, and like anything, good communication can head off a lot of problems. The second one, if we're all doing a lot of bids, and particularly for firms that have dedicated bid people, there is a bit of a sausage factory going on where, you know, one bid finishes, the next has already started. It's important to keep up the team's morale, particularly if we're working on some bids that are maybe a bit more negligible. No one wants to work on ones that they think are going to lose. So, you know, good sense of humour about it all, checking in on people, and a genuine check-in, not a checking up on. Those sorts of things are important because those bid team people are actually critical, of course. Another obvious but important thing, when we're not all on site together, often in smaller to medium firms, we're relying on one or two solution technical experts for a lot of the key decisions and input. If you can delegate or diffuse some of that decision making and actually give people the delegated authority to sign off on things, that can make it a lot easier, because often the wheels will fall off as the deadline approaches when you've got a log jam. If there's one person who's also, you know, responsible for managing projects that are on foot as well as running an entire bid. So
yeah, man. Just jumping in a little bit there, Amy, you know, if you take those first 3 points, it's really important that everyone involved in the bid, particularly the technical experts, the subject matter experts, are honest about their time and their deadlines. So when someone's putting together that bid plan and that project plan for it, people need to be honest about when they'll be able to deliver stuff rather than optimistic, or when they think it should arrive, because there's nothing more stressful than waiting on material and having to plan and replan, and it never comes until 2 hours before deadline, and what you know, it's littered with typos, and it goes in. Really important just to be open and honest, so the person in charge can actually put the proper plan in place so it can happen, because you do have to commit to it and stick to that commitment. So it's better to kind of have a robust conversation early in the piece, and that does help with keeping up the team bids morale, because there's nothing worse than seeing yourself as the nagger and chaser that never gets an answer and gets fobbed off.
And I think, echoing what you were saying, Ben, that sinking feeling that someone is only really, really looking at it, you know, 48 hours before deadline and saying things like, this will all need to be recast or reworked. And guess what? We're out of time. So yes, being realistic about that sort of stuff is critical to winning. Getting on top of tech, engineering firms usually are fairly well versed in all this sort of stuff, with nice directories, good file and document version management and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, there are some nifty things you can use to help automate parts of proposal development. But I've also seen people have very effective SharePoints set up to help with online collaboration. So, you know, it doesn't need to be fancy or expensive. It just needs to work and be understood by everyone who's working within it. And you only ever want to be maybe 3 or 4 clicks from any one file. It's one of my tips. Not too many folders in folders. It's got to be searchable, findable. Yeah.
Totally agree. Most of Microsoft stuff is free now, so you can easily use it. There's other fancy systems as well, which are great, but
yeah.
Absolutely.
So, and then the other tip we had for last year and perhaps now is, if you don't already have a well-organised bid content library with all your boilerplate and project highlights and things set up, you know, the time is ripe, because again, it helps inject a lot of efficiency into your bidding process. So if we go to the next slide, please, Holly. Yeah. So I think, you know, it's not going to do everything for you. It still needs tailoring, etc. And it's, again, the proposal automation software that you can get, it doesn't have any of the nuance that's required for each individual project or client. However, it can get you 2/3 to 70% of the way there. So you can get a really solid first draft together earlier in the piece, which then frees you up to spend 30% of the time to tailor in ways that will help your bid not only be compliant but compelling and resonant.
Yeah, it's
to those evaluators.
A lot easier to edit than it is to write from scratch. Trying to remember
That's
stuff.
right.
So if you almost got more information in your bid library and all your content, there's more than you require. Delete takes about 3 seconds to do, if that. So it's really useful tool for someone there once they've outlined the message to be able to get the information together. And as Amy said, that first draft just flies out the door really, really fast. It's efficient, and you can really start tailoring it.
Yeah, so if we go to the next one, particularly for engineering bids, as we know, the team, CVs and their expertise, and also your firm's collective experience, your project highlights, both are critical. And I think over the years, what I've seen, it might take 2 or 3 years before you build up a really well stocked repository of this stuff. So, you know, with the CVs, I think what's important, as we were saying earlier, is to capture new tidbits as they're developed for different bids, and what you will end up with is almost like a master career data file for each of your engineers, and it might be 20 pages long. And then for each particular opportunity, you're going to condense that down into a 1, 2, 3 pager that makes that engineer look like they were born to do this project. So yeah, it's editing down from the long to get to the short. And with your project highlights, I think I wouldn't stress so much about having something beautifully laid out with photos for every single job, but either through your accounting, so the invoicing that you're using, software, or through final reports, pull the data. So, you know, client name, project, time frame, value of the project, your fees, get the shell together. So you've got a master list somewhere that, whether it's marketing that controls that or someone in operations, and then you can start fleshing them out. And again, it might take 2, 3, up to 5 years before you have a really good library. But that would be a way to start building that up.
Absolutely. I think that brings that section to a conclusion. If we now go back to technology, we're going to do a poll, I believe. So this should be yes, no. How are we going to do this now? Show of hands, I guess, if people have got it. Can we do that? Has your bid no bid qualification process been abandoned since COVID-19? So if you put your hand up if it has been abandoned, and nothing if it hasn't. Oh no, actually you can, there's an answer, isn't it? Yes, so has your bid no bid qualification process been abandoned since COVID-19? Yeah, if we answer those questions there, that'd be cool. That's me thinking it was yes, no, but it's actually not. Apologies.
Cool. And yeah, we've seen about 65% of our viewers voting.
Cool.
Hands down, the standout selection has been much the same as pre-pandemic. We've got 21% saying stronger, we're careful about pursuing unlikely bids. And then the following two, what qualification process? We've never really had one. That's coming in at around 10%. So yeah, so we've got about 70% of the voters. While I'm unmuted, I also want to do a little call out. You guys remember, you can pose your questions to Ben or Amy at any time. Type those in and we can get your specific questions hopefully answered. So feel free to use that resource as well.
Awesome. Let's jump back to the slides. Next slide. Next one again. Awesome. So this is the fun part.
Yes.
Which you know about a million other ways. Sometimes breaking the tender process or doing something slightly different. And you can see my energy levels come up because this is the part that I find most exciting. So
that's right.
How you actually respond when you have little chance of winning, you know. There's lots of things to do. The first point is actually, if you're saying no, you can say no with a real clear reason. It's one of the things that is people find the most challenging. It's one of the things I've written the most about. It's been most taken up. Saying no is not a chance to just say no because we're not going to win and leave it there. The first thing to do is make sure with any client or anyone you may want to work with, do it early. The earlier in the piece, it allows them, if they need certain types of respondents, to actually go out to market again and do that. They would appreciate knowing it early. It looks like you've got a clear strategic plan if you go nice and early in the piece. Secondly, is seeing if you can actually offer them something outside of the tender. So now you're out of it, can you offer to review the tenders there, provide them with some other pieces of advice? One thing that's really, really cool is you can actually say, look, we estimated we'd spend about 2 weeks of our engineers' time on this bid. Rather than doing that, we'd rather invest that money in you running a one-day workshop, share what we know about the project so far, so that when you come ready to start, you can get on the front foot and start a better process. We'd rather give you that free IP straight away, so your project's successful. If you think about that, that's actually demonstrating and showing your work in the moment in a really cool way, and actually building trust with that person and showing your expertise. If you put that offer and they say no, they'll still have that nice thought that you've put that offer forward to them to try and help them. And you're trying to do stuff other than earning money, but you're actually trying to help them in what they're trying to achieve, which is really a key part of this, you know.
Yeah.
Anything you do with no response, little chance of winning, is really about getting face time and moving up the chain and getting ready for the next bid. And we have seen this work at other places where people have not gone for a bid, and actually the next thing they found out is they've just been appointed by the person there. So it's really cool to have those kind of ideas in place, because the other ways, if you do respond, is you can try and go with a non-compliant bid, and they can land one or two ways. But sometimes if you know you're going to come, what they say is second, but second tends to mean fourth or fifth. People just don't like to say you came last. If you really are low on having much chance of success, then why not put something in that's slightly different, particularly if you think there's a different option that will work for the client. Put in a non-conforming bid, because the worst can happen is you'll still lose, but they may actually take you on a side project. They'll at least generate interest and show you're thinking about them in a different way. Because quite often, particularly government organisations, they send out an RFP, but they haven't thought through the options. They're not sure, they haven't had the conversations beforehand, so maybe they are waiting for some expertise and some different thoughts to come in. And you can always put in a conforming and non-conforming bid if that's your thing as well, depending on the rules.
That's right. And I think so many of the firms in the engineering world have as a value or even part of their tagline that they're innovative. And there's some ways to actually, you know, model innovative behaviours. I know a lot of engineering is risk averse, but again, if you know that you have very little chance, but are using it maybe as a profile raising exercise or a way to offer some kind of value to a prospective client, it could get you noticed in positive ways, provided you do it appropriately. So yeah, if we go to the next slide, please, Holly.
Well, I'll cut in here because we've got a clarity question that's come in.
Yeah.
Asking about, you know, what type of content that you mentioned in that workshop offer, what would that be like? And a little more clarity on that example would be very appreciated.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and great question. Look, in that example, it would tend to be around the actual project itself. So if someone has got a big civil engineering project and they're looking at the options, you might go in and run with them and take in your team and say, look, here are like the 4 or 6 challenges as we see it. We thought we'd have a workshop with you, and here's the things you're going to have to really think about in stage 1 to be successful, and actually work and give them a plan at the end of that workshop, which, whether you've done it on a whiteboard or printed it out, you give to them and help them actually start that project off successfully, which will be great for the wider New Zealand community. But, you know, type it up, send it on your heavy paper, and you've actually given them their project plan. And next time they come to look at who they should appoint or work with, you're going to be pretty high on that list going back to who's the favourite, to Amy's point earlier. So it's really about actually that technical expertise in that area. Hopefully that answers your question.
All right.
So getting into that, Co-opetition, which is a word I can't say, Amy. I struggle with it.
Yes, it's a bit of a buzzwordy word.
Yeah.
But basically, it's not a new idea for the engineering world. Consortium bids, joint ventures, alliances. I think that's worth exploring in the current environment. If you can't win on your own, can you perhaps team up? Do you have some distinct expertise? Thinking, about the 12D drainage example, can you offer value to a bigger firm and win work that way as maybe a junior partner? And if you are going to be joint venturing, try to be a good JV partner. So that means having things like your CVs and other information ready to go if you're a more junior player in a bigger bid. So yeah, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on JV opportunities, Ben, but yeah.
I mean, the main part about this is to get your dance partner early. So there's lots of joint venture opportunities out in the marketplace and people are looking for alliances, and actually teaming up makes lots of sense to get the right expertise. And government obviously clearly looks for you to bring in niche players under a bigger umbrella because they're looking to widen the pool that they use in the market. But if you don't go out to market early, you won't get the people that you want, which will mean you're less likely to succeed. So sometimes it's strategically important to partner with someone if you know they're more likely to win, and the two of you together winning. And I've seen this before and experienced it where I actually have come a very close second on a bid and we weren't partnered, and the two biggest firms in New Zealand were partnered together. So it's a very easy decision for the procurement panel to make. So make sure you pick your partners early.
That's right. And have a good agreement before the RFP comes out.
Know who's doing what. Here's the fun part. People loving to buy work. The idea that if we lowball it and even if we make loss leaders, if we have a loss leader, it helps keep people busy and keep the lights on. The term loss leader means you're losing money, which means it doesn't keep the lights on, which means it doesn't actually pay people. And if you look at the construction sector particularly, and there's examples all around the world, places like Carillion, people have actually gone under with this kind of strategy. There's a lot of risk in the projects you do. It should be rightly rewarded. And actually, as an industry, and we are talking to the industry body here today, the danger of lowballing is once someone starts bringing the price down of the service you offer, that becomes the price for that service. That becomes the market price. So then you're hurting each other. So buyers don't actually tend to buy on price. And if you're buying a really big and important strategic project with lots of risks, if you're honest with yourself and you were the buyer, would you buy the cheapest service? The chances are you wouldn't, because you'd be worried it wouldn't be good enough. You might not buy the most expensive because you might think they've overcooked it, which tends to mean as long as you're in that pack, that middle ground, your pricing will be right and immaterial, and they'll make decisions based on who they think is most likely to win the work, do the job correctly, and who they actually want to work with. Because if you're on a long project, you've got to like the people you're working with. So, that's really, really important. But don't lose it on price because of, and I'm sure you've seen this a lot, Amy, around the idea of like misscoping the work.
Oh, yep. And that is a classic. And I think all the engineers would know this, that you've got to have the right subject matter experts involved in the bid development at the outset. And a story from my SKM days was a job involving one of the city water corporations, and on the plans it looked like something was just a culvert, and as it happened we'd just hired someone from Sydney Water who was like, no, that is actually a giant water main. It needs to be rescoped and reworked, and they were able to alter the quotation in time because that could have been very costly. And I think, with lowballing in order to just win or doing bids, at a loss, my old boss would say, like, it is a way to get known, but what do you want to be known as? A loser? So, think carefully.
Yeah, absolutely. We go to the next slide, please, Holly. So we talked a bit about putting alternative tenders alongside your current ones, but you can actually put an unsolicited proposal in. This did happen a reasonable amount and with varying degrees of success down in Christchurch when the rebuild was gathering its pace. It can be a really clever way of getting yourself front of queue and top of mind, even if they don't take the unsolicited proposal, but the tender comes out and what do you know, it's pretty similar to the thing you put the unsolicited bid in for. It shows you're top of mind and top of the queue, and it, you know, people there, particularly in a situation where they're trying to do a lot of work, government departments are under resourced, under strain to get these tenders out. They don't want to sit there and wait for ideas. So if you can do it by conversation, or you can do it with a document and a talking point to have that conversation, it can be a really clever way to kind of get you front of mind and start pushing things up the agenda.
Yep. And if we go to the next slide, I've got an example from Sydney. So this Tennant Hills Road was notorious for, you know, there was an accident every single day. This photo is from 2017 when a whole lot of milk was spilt out the back of a truck. And it was a critical junction road between the M1 and M2 motorways. So a consortium got together and presented an unsolicited proposal to the New South Wales government. And if we jump to the next slide, they recently opened the North Connex tunnel, which links both the motorways, and they like to say you can go from Brisbane to Melbourne with no traffic lights. So it's kind of a fun example of an unsolicited proposal working, and yes, it did cost I think $3 billion. But as someone in the infrastructure world said to me, look, it's the kind of thing that the city is going to be really glad that they've got in 20 years time. And it's already made a massive difference to Pennant Hills Road. So again, that innovation, yeah, that innovation piece, yeah, and this is just a fun final tip, because again, we're maybe not going to be able to get together in person. If you're doing things like Ben and I are, make sure you have run-throughs, use your best presenters. And yeah, test the technology, but also do at least one dry run, because you may be trying to negotiate as well in a shortlisting interview. So yeah.
I would say have a backup plan for when someone cuts out, when the video doesn't work, when they have to dial in, all those kind of things. Have how you're going to manage it and what you would do when technology fails, because it will fail.
Yep.
Sounds like a voice of doom there, and not trusting the technology. Technology is fabulous, but the moment you do it, we all know that sometimes the internet can just play fun games with you. So we kick to the next slide. Yeah.
So some final thoughts. If you're not going to be going for as many bids, hopefully, but maybe not. Yeah, think about other business development activities you can be doing in the meantime. And again, it's about positioning as a favourite, but also perhaps certainly with some of the private sector work that's up for grabs, maybe winning things without needing to do a full formal tender. So yeah, cozying up to your existing clients, your network partners, your referral partners, potential joint venture partners, adding value. The client satisfaction research, that helps with your positioning and understanding what you're doing well or where you need to improve. Or you can do some market research. And again, that might give you an opportunity to approach an organisation and say, we've done a survey of the wetlands and we've got the inside track on X. No one else has this information. It's exclusive to us. And you can position as experts in an area. And it should not be overlooked that most professional services professionals can always benefit from some of those soft skills training add-ons.
Because in reality, your best chance of success is to build those relationships and share the expertise early, because then the bid, if they do have to go for a bid, and government will have to go for a bid, becomes a coronation, and you re-emphasising the conversations you had and reminding them of that. And the decision is, in a lot of cases, made before the bid's even issued, because it takes a lot. Someone's confident and ready to work with someone. often clever writing to get them to make a change. So invest early and track the relationships and the opportunities you want to win, and that will lead to the greater chance of success for all these lovely things here. And I think that brings us to a nice conclusion, almost on time, 2 minutes over, not bad. But we'd love to hear your questions if there's any kicking around.
Yeah, so just a reminder, you guys, you can type in your questions, but I was jotting down a couple, and I think you briefly touched on all of these things, but it's not a two-part question, but a little bit background, because you know, some people, we wonder, there have been a whole bunch of shovel-ready projects and other things that have been publicly announced. So I guess the first quick part is, have you seen a little bit of a slowdown in like, hey, we've announced this, but where's the bid opportunity? And then following up to that question, and it might be a little bit more in the business development space, but any recommendations or proactive behavior to increase maybe bid opportunity? And I know you did use a couple of examples, but I think looping back to that might be really good.
Do you want to kick off, Amy, or do you want me to?
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking about, because I was reading up on a lot of this yesterday. Yeah, there's a lot of mixed messaging, and there's like maybe a 2 or 3 speed thing happening with some of these shovel-ready announcements. And again, we were saying earlier, obviously the pandemic has been a factor in it, and then with the election year, I know a lot of procurement exercises were delayed late last year. And we're now into April, obviously, though. So I'm not sure if there's going to be a great unleashing of the RFTs. And I think maybe that's where ACE is maybe networked in almost as lobbyists and has those relationships with various, you know, departments, transport, etc., water care, various of the bigger councils.
And if history tells
finding out stuff off record.
Yeah, and if history tells anything, they usually all come out at the same time. But that last point about finding out off record is really key, actually. If you're waiting for gets, you're not doing your BD correctly. You need to be talking to not just the procurement teams, but those who will ultimately be in charge and driving these key projects, finding out where they see they're going to come out to market and where they are. I mean, ideally, you would have done that 8 months ago, but you can still, if they haven't come out to market, start having those conversation pieces now, finding out where they're at. But then you can take that conversation a step further. This is where you start to be helpful as well as selling your services. So actually you're saying, you know, so what are the blockers? What are stopping you getting this to market? What help could you need? How can we help you navigate this through your internal departments? How can we navigate it with a wider stakeholder community? Because obviously some of these projects will have an impact on the general public, and that has political issues as well. So it's kind of, what can you do to help them get to the stage that that bid opportunity comes in, and in doing so, by being helpful, put you at the top of the queue. So it's a meaningful conversation which positions you for the work, but actually helps them in getting it to where they want to do, because obviously they're measured around getting this stuff out there, designed and built.
Excellent. And I'll try and in the skipping ahead a little bit to my announcements, but everyone who's RSVP'd for the webinar, you'll get emailed a recording of today's webinar along with the slides. But I'll also include a link, because I know, Ben, you did a webinar with us previously on kind of, what can you do to proactively build that business, and exactly what you talked on. So I'll link that webinar in this email as well if you're curious to go back and kind of deep dive into some of that. We haven't got any more audience questions, but I'll just ask one more to you guys and then we can wrap things up. And you did kind of touch on it, but you know, obviously we don't really want to support that kind of like lowest price, unsustainable commercial bids, but how can I create an edge for my company when I know I'm going up against others who are doing that?
My first instinct would be, don't bid. So, you know, if you're going to put yourself in the ring to try and win a job and you're continually losing, but you're the cheapest, but that's a perception of your brand, that you're cheap and potentially not right for doing the work. You don't understand it. It's not necessarily the best look. I understand why people do it. There's a pressure to feed yourself and feed those around you and keep the lights on, but it's not a sustainable way of doing it. It's far better to actually be open and honest and sometimes say, you know, hey, we weren't ready for this. We weren't quite top of the queue. We missed something with you. We'd love to come and chat to you and actually find out about what else is coming up, understand you better and give you a bit of overview of what we could do. And hopefully in that conversation, we can also give you some insights about this project we've been thinking about, which just might help you progress it along. So you can kind of change the conversation, because people don't like to associate with losing brands. And the other thing that's going back to being a salesperson and having built a business, as we mentioned at the start here, you know, people don't buy from people who have that lovely sort of aura of desperation. And chucking in a low price is that aura of desperation. So actually you need to become more confident. Almost counterintuitively, you better to put in and put yourself, even if you're going to lose at the higher end of the market, to create a brand perception that you know what you're doing and you are somewhat more exclusive than cheap as chips, would be my take on it. Anything to add on that, Amy?
Yeah, and I think the flip side is being told that you lost with that vague, oh, your pricing was too high. I'm just recalling now, I've got a blog on that, which I can send a link to Holly. But yeah, the classic thing with engineering bids is not scoping properly with the preliminary design or technical solution, and then there's tears and, you know, blowouts and you know, taking the mickey a bit with variations as the project unfolds, and everyone, you know, it's not an enjoyable experience. And yeah, I think pricing needs to be carefully thought through, ideally before the bid comes out, if we know we've got advance notice, because we've been positioning properly. But yeah, you really do need those subject matter experts to put the focused attention in, so what we're proposing is credible and we can live with, and it's not a loss leader if we do win it. So, you know, it's sustainable that way.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Well, thanks so much for those tips. And I like what I've noticed, the common theme, I think, through all of them is if you're faced with kind of a bad decision or a bad set of terms or something in that negative realm, to use that as an opportunity to transition to either a better conversation, a better relationship, positioning your company as, hey, I'm not just a robot who's responding to A, B, and C. You know, I'm thinking between the lines and I'm actually trying to have this conversation to deliver better value for you and me. And to me, that just kind of says, ultimately, that's the kind of partner you want, who's going to deliver the right solution, I think, in the end. So I've certainly enjoyed your expertise. And to all those who are watching, thank you so much for giving us a bit of your time. Thank you to Amy and Ben for giving us your expertise. I've said it before, but I'll just recap. We have recorded this. You guys will be emailed a link to the recording. You'll be emailed the slides, and Amy has already sent me a couple of really good blog posts. So we'll take a selection of those and link those in the email as well on some of these key topics that they've addressed. So you can do some more reading if you're curious. So with all of that, I'll just say thank you guys so much for giving us a bit of your time today. We hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. And if there is any content, something else you want us to present on, please drop us a line at ACE New Zealand and we'll do our best. So see you, everyone.
Cheers, bye.